Okay, we are moving on from dissipation of individual glamour to the dissipation of group glamour and of world glamour. This is a progression. Ultimately, we should have work on the individual glamour and world glamour before moving on. I'm sorry, the individual glamour before moving on to this. So this, really, it's almost like a field of service, but we're just gonna read this. This is actually a pretty long section, and it's important. We're gonna get started. I have no clue what's coming here, but I did go ahead and look to see, what's after this, and it's a technique of indifference, and boy, is that going to be very interesting as well. And just some super powerful stuff, even left towards the end of this book. It's all just so good. Okay. Group work in dissipating world glamour must be handled, as will be obvious to you, by those who are working at the dissipation of glamour in their own lives and have learned to use the formula just given, which was from yesterday's video. The majority of those so working are sixth ray aspirants. Yeah. And again, something we need to, something we need to look into is our ray structure. But those who have sixth ray personalities, or whose soul ray is the sixth, plus those on all rays who have powerful sixth ray astral vehicles. And we live in the United States, which is a sixth ray country, but the sixth ray is going out. But so it makes sense that being that the sixth ray is going out, and the sixth ray is it's the ray of idealism and can manifest and can express in many different ways. It's easy to see that we need to dissipate all this, because the sixth ray is also representative of the astral plane. Yeah, that's a very deep conversation, of which I am not qualified to necessarily talk about, nor would we have the time to talk about. But you would consider looking at William Meaders on some of the Theosophical Society videos, and certainly Michael Robbins and the Moria Federation website, or even Makara.com can help with some of those. And then there's also, there's more, believe me, I can't remember all. Philip Lindsay, I think, discusses the seven rays quite a bit. But ultimately, we can learn them, and we should learn them by reading these books. Heck, the 5 books are called the 5 or 6 books. It's called the Treatise of the Seven Rays, and it's the few volumes put together that create that I don't know, what do you even call it, a compilation of that treatise. It's a treatise. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, the sixth ray is very powerful, and it does keep, it keeps hold on ideals, and we have to be careful. That's why it's important we do this work. So those are sixth ray personalities, or the 6+. Okay, so these make the most effective workers in the group, but are subject to one major difficulty. Here we go. In spite of aspiration and good intention, they are seldom aware of the glamours which control them. It is exceedingly hard to induce the sixth ray aspirant to admit that he is held by a glamour, particularly when it is glamour of spiritual connotation and of a very high order. In their case, the glamour is enhanced by the energy of devotion, which stiffens it and brings in a quality which makes it most difficult to penetrate. Their complete assurance proves a serious obstacle to clear-sighted work, because that has all to go before the work of dissipation can be carried forward successfully. First-rate people can overcome glamour with relative ease once they become aware of it as a personality limitation. Third-rate people are as susceptible to it as are those of the sixth ray, and their devious, twisting, planning minds and the rapidity with which they can deceive themselves and seek often to deceive others greatly hinders their work of clearing away glamour. Their pronounced tendency to be the victims of glamour is evidenced by the inability of the third-rate aspirant and disciple to convey his meaning clearly by speech. He has guarded himself for many lives by devious formulations of thought and of ideas, and can seldom convey his meaning clearly. This is why sixth-rate people and third-rate people most inevitably prove themselves unable to teach. Both these groups must, therefore, learn to use this formula, and they would greatly hasten the process of dissipation if they would force themselves to speak or write their thoughts clearly, if they would never be ambiguous or deal in half thoughts, innuendo, or suggestion. They should clearly enunciate the ideas with which they may be dealing. And that may be very easy for some of us to see. And I want to say that there's some Scorpio type energy. So if you have Scorpio, potentially, maybe even harder. And then if we're dealing with a lot of Pluto in our chart, all of these things are, all these things are even amplified and can be amplified. And I say that unknowingly, just so you know. Don't please, because I don't. These are my thoughts. The seventh-rate person is faced with the difficulty of being able to create exceedingly clear-cut thought forms, and the glamours, therefore, which control him are precise and definite, and to him, all compelling. They rapidly crystallize, however, and die their own death. Second-rate aspirants are usually fully aware of any glamour which may be seeking to hold them, because they have an innate faculty of clear perception. Should be also easy for some of us to see. Their problem is to kill out in themselves their rapid response to the magnetic pull of the astral plane and its many and widespread glamours. And so as we're reading these things, if these things become very clear for you, that may be an indicator as well. They are not so frequently responsive to a glamour as to all glamours in a relatively temporary manner, but one which is nevertheless exceedingly delaying to their progress. Because of their clear-sightedness, they add to this sensitivity to glamour an ability to suffer about it and to register their responsiveness as a sin and failure, and thus delay their liberation from it by a negative attitude of inferiority and distress. There's many of us are working on the second ray of and building second ray energy and our second ray souls, and there's all this. It's just very much study, and there's it's very hard. Nobody's ever said, hey, you're this, that, and this. I don't even know if I'm right. Essentially, I have my thoughts of my rays, And I feel pretty comfortable with them. And the more I see these things come up, the more I recognize them as being, that I'm true, and they're probably true. And a lot of times your initial instinct when you're exposed to them would probably be correct, is what William Meters had said. And I found that to be pretty true. They will profit enormously from a constant use of the formula until the time comes when they are aware of the glamour or glamours, but are not touched by them. And see, so that's the answer for the second ray, is to overcome the glamours. That's really it. That's that. I want to say that's what he's saying here. We can't be, until we're touched by them, we have to just press through, keep using the formula, keep dealing on these glamours until they're gone. Fifth ray people suffer the least from glamour, but are primarily the victims of illusion. Because what's the fifth ray significant of is of the mental plane, right? So yeah, so they are going to be more susceptible to illusion. Just as the sixth ray would be glamour. And the seventh ray be the physical plane, type stuffs. And for them, the technique of the presence is all important because it brings in a factor which the true fifth ray person is apt to negate and refuse to admit, the fact of the higher self. He feels self-sufficient. They respond so easily and with such satisfaction to the power of thought. Pride in their mental competence is their besetting sin, and they are therefore set in their purposes and preoccupied with the world of the concrete and intellectual. So you're looking at the intellectuals here. And that should be very easy for us to see, actually. And now you can kind of see where people might fit in their race structure. And you can begin to understand what we're looking at with these eyeballs in others slightly, right? The moment that the angel of the presence is a reality to them, the response to illusion weakens and disappears. Their major problem is not so much of the negation of the astral body, for they are apt to despise its hold, but they have a major difficulty in recognizing that which the mind is intended to reveal, the divine spiritual self. The lower concrete mind interposes itself between them and the vision. Fourth ray people are particularly prone to fall into glamour, and thus to produce a condition which is one of extreme difficulty. It might define their problem by saying that they tend to bring their illusions down to the astral plane and there clothe them with glamour and have consequently a double problem upon their hands. They are faced with the unification of glamour and illusion. They are, however, the group of souls which will eventually reveal the true nature of the intuition, and this will be the result of their illusory glamorous fight in the world of appearances. We can come now to the consideration of the formula to be used by those who seek to serve humanity by deliberately breaking up and dispersing the glamours which hold the race in thrall, and who know the need to do this in group formation. Certain individual characteristics are essential for the personnel of such groups. First of all, there must be an ability to work without attachment to results and to use the formula for a given length of time. For instance, once a week for 2 years or more. without looking for results. They need to realize that they can never know whether they are successful or not, because the glamours they are attempting to dissipate are so widespread and general that effects cannot be grasped by their individual minds. They are too close to the picture. Their perspective has necessarily to be that of the immediate foreground. Secondly, they must have an intelligent apprehension of what constitutes a world glamour so that they can occultly name it and, by doing so, contact it. They must thirdly be accustomed to the work of dispersing glamour in their own lives, the necessity to do this, and their success in so doing are factors which indicate their suitability for the task. And we know whether or not we've succeeded to some extent or another, because we know what we're magnetically drawn to at this point. They must finally love their fellow men. This they must not do as the sixth ray person loves them, with an isolating devotion, but as the second ray person loves, with an all-around appreciation of humanity, an understanding heart, plus a critical mind, which loves steadily in spite of errors seen, with a clear-sighted perception of the assets and the debts of an individual or race. The ability to do this is one of the factors which enables the sixth ray aspirant to transfer off the minor sixth ray and find his place upon the major second ray, as must all sixth and fourth ray initiates. That's an interesting thing, friends. It's a very interesting thing. And you may, it may be recognized in you. You may be able to recognize that over some time and space that's what happened or is happening. One of the requirements in this group work is a most careful choice of those. One of the requirements in this group work is a most careful choice of those who are to participate in the work. They must be chosen because they can work together. They must either know each other exceedingly well and be free from personality frictions, or they must be relatively unknown to each other as personalities, but are drawn to each other as soul collaborators in this particular work. That is pretty cool. They must, as far as in them lies, endeavor to work with regularity so that a rhythm can be set up. Sorry about that. So a rhythm can be set up which will lead to a steady rhythmic impact of the light upon the glamour. They must also adhere faithfully to the formula given. This is one of the initial formulas and is most powerful because it is one of the very first to be used in group dissipation of glamour. This whole procedure is entirely new as far as man is concerned. And the work to be done will necessarily prove hard as it involves an interesting situation. The groups who will do this work of piercing the glamours which dim the vision of humanity and of dissipating them will be the first non-initiate groups to work this way upon the physical plane and to work consciously and with fixed intent. Now, we know that that Master DK was doing group work when these books were written, and we know that they really it didn't work out very well because there's of so many personalities. And I think that what we're reading here is we really need people. He really needs people who are very clear, whose atmosphere has been clear of the glamours themselves. And if you read some of that was not the case when he was doing this, that there were still very much personalities involved. And if you've ever been a part of the groups here, you know that these personality conflicts inevitably come up. It's amazing to me. It's amazing that people have these, that we're attached to these, our ideas or our own personal ideals. It took a while to get comfortable with that, actually. I didn't see these things in myself at first. You don't see them, and then they become more clear, and then we work through them. And then to find, I don't. It would be very difficult to find a bunch of people who are just very clear and have cleared their atmosphere altogether. Because even the people who are running things, aspects of groups and stuff, they still have their personalities, which is crazy too. So these things just happening from a distance, you don't necessarily have to be in each other's presence. You don't necessarily have to be friends. You don't necessarily have to, all be, in the same sort of order, but just of the same stock, essentially. And we can do this work now from a distance. There's lots of groups doing different meditations and different things, and there's lots of esoteric schools, and that's very deep as well, because are they really, I'm gonna leave it there. There's a point where we have to go at it on our own. How about that? Nothing wrong with the groups and the esoteric schools and all that, but there's a lot of glamour involved in that as well. Lots of glamour. It's just trading out one glamour for another, essentially, if we look at it. We have to be very careful, but to get a big group of people together who dissipated their, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for to do soon. That's what we want, right? The groups who will do this work of piercing the glamours, which dim the vision of humanity, and of dissipating them, will be the first non-initiate groups to work this way upon the physical plane, and to work consciously and with fixed intent. Hitherto, the work has been carried forward by members of the hierarchy, and then only with the idea of holding back the glamours until such time as humanity was ready to destroy that which it had created. Glamours have also been pierced before now by massed effort, carried forward for a long time, and usually without any real conscious understanding, right? An illustration of this would be the work done by the church in a diffused and vague way in piercing the glamour of material desire and material good by substituting the idea of a heavenly substitute. The work that is now planned is dynamic and clear-cut, consciously carried forward and specific in its impact. It is a definite method of handling and projecting the energy of light with the objective of destroying the impediments of an emotional mental nature upon the path of return to God. And that emotional mental nature we could call kama manasic, which is, what the average is today. It is desirable and aids an easier and more concentrated form of work in the group. I'm sorry, I'm going to start that over. It is desirable and aids an easier and more concentrated form of work if the group can meet together for the use of the formula. It's more concentrated that way. And I know Michael, and I want to say that the Moria Federation, Michael Robbins used to do some of this, and that's great. If, however, this proves not possible, then the personnel of the group can arrange to work apart, but with the idea of the work being group work firmly realized and with a steady recognition of the members who form the group body. Okay, very good. This is necessary both for the pooling of the light and also for the protection from the glamour to be attacked. This pooling of the light is a major requirement and must ever be borne in mind whenever possible. The rule should be that the work is done at some definite planned group meeting, even if this entails quite drastic sacrifice on the part of some of the members. There you go. Even if this entails quite drastic sacrifice on the part of some of the members. I advise that some glamour, which all the group members recognize as a major hindrance to the progress of humanity, be one of the first handled by the group. Wow. I would also advise that in the early stages of their work, they deal with a glamour affecting aspirants, and that they do not attempt to tackle the more widely spread and deeply centered glamours of the race as a whole. Let them develop facility in handling some of the lesser and more easily visualized glamours. Then as time goes on and facility in the work is gained, the group can pass to the more difficult tasks and handle the glamours further removed from their own orbit of difficulties. It is surely needless for me to point out that the group members be but those who are endeavoring to keep their own lives free from glamour. I would also add that if a group member is in the thick of glamour himself and is occupied with wrestling with it, he should abstain from the group work until he has freed himself with the aid of the individual formula. Boy, I really can't even begin to tell you how deep this is. It just makes so much sense. And we can also see why groups would not work, and why people try to bring groups together and then and they fall apart, and then that things get weird. Yeah, I just leave it there. Those who can face themselves with an open eye and who see the truth as it is, who can face the same facts in connection with humanity, and can stand serene and unafraid in the face of the worst kind of discoveries about themselves in the world of men are those who will employ this technique with the most success. I would also remind you that the group will need to protect itself from the glamour or the glamours which it is attempting to dissipate. Their individual tendency to glamour is the factor which gives them the right to serve in this way, but it also lays them open to danger, and for this, a protective formula will be necessary. The formula will therefore be divided into 3 parts. Preparatory stage, the use of the protective formula, and the group formula for the dissipation of glamour. The work done by the individual in dealing with his personal problems of glamour will greatly facilitate the preparatory work of the group. You will know. Oh, good morning. Hold on 1 second. I'm on video. Okay, that was interesting. That was Carla, which I was really just thinking about her, and it's always how that works. Because Carla absolutely fits into this whole thing, because she's been my mentor and our mentor, and has been helping us understand how all this works. But I imagine it's frustrating for some people to deal with some of us who have not, gotten caught up very fast, or who are just getting caught up, or who are just learning and getting in the groove of these things. So I imagine it would be frustrating. We could be frustrating to those who are advanced, and we're not frustrating to them, which is even more interesting. We are doing this in a very evolutionary very progressive way, and they don't have this glamour or illusion that we do, but they still have to deal with the fact that we have it. And then we watch ourselves, rid ourselves of illusion and glamour. We can begin to see how much of a hindrance we've been on those who are more advanced. And then you can see the level of patience that is required to deal with us, with aspirants and disciples who have not recognized or come around yet, and dissipated the glamour and illusions, and moved on from the personality life so much yet more into the soul life. It's a very wild transition period. So Carla's more than our astrologer. She's very learned in this material, and is an expression of it, I should say. But anyway, I don't need to talk too much about that. This is a pretty obscure video, and if somebody finds that, that's great. And if we watched the earlier videos on a treatise on white magic, it would be good to listen to those videos because where Carla's reading from can lift us up higher, and we can see through glamours and illusions while listening to her speak, just as it is with other advanced disciples and initiates and aspirants. And however, I'll leave it at that. So you will note that in outlining to you this work, I make no reference to the type of room, to the position of the group members, to the posture assumed, to the use of incense, or to any of the paraphernalia which so many occult groups deem of importance. The set physical rituals are today, from the angle of the hierarchy, entirely obsolete and of no importance where disciples and advanced aspirants are concerned. And this should be something when we read this, we go, I knew it. I know this. Yes, I burn incense because it's pleasant, and it just kind of, I'm not burning it for any other reason. I'm not trying, I like it. It is pleasant, and it does kind of set an atmosphere, and it changes the environment slightly. It makes it, a little more spiritual, or and I don't see that as a glamour. It's not burning right now. I don't have any rituals burning it. I don't have any I think we know this. That's what I'm saying. It's great. No positions, no postures, no uses of any paraphernalias. This is great. Entirely obsolete. We knew that. That's good. They are of value to the little evolved, in whom the sense of drama has to be developed and who need external aids. And they do provide a setting which serves to help beginners to keep the theme of their work and their objective in view. The only ritual which is still regarded as of value to the human family as a whole, particularly to the advanced person, is the Masonic ritual. The reason for this is that it is a pictorial representation of the process of creation, of the relation between God and man, of the path of return, and also of those great initiations through the themes of which the liberated initiate passes into the council chamber of the Most High. But with the exception of this, the small petty rituals of position and of physical relations in respect to attitude and seating arrangements are regarded as unnecessary and as usurping frequently the attention which should be given to the work in hand. Those using these formulas are presumed to have acquired some measure of inner polarization and to be able to withdraw themselves to their spiritual center in any place and at any time. Now that should be telling for us as well. This is the center of quiet thought from whence the work is carried on, and more or less the position of the observer, I want to say. All that is needed as a preface to this work is 10 minutes of complete silence in which the group members attempt to set up that magnetic field of positive receptive activity. Note here the paradoxes of the occult sciences, which will make the rest of the work possible. I'm not going to delve into that. I don't, but I probably would be wrong about this is something that I want to say might come to us as we think about it, because as we just read this up here. But I've been wrong on so many occasions that I don't feel comfortable being wrong about that one. The leader of the group chosen in rotation so that all members of the group occupy that position. Fantastic. This would absolutely be the perfect way for a group to run. That's perfect, isn't it? Dang. Starts with the work by calling the names of the group members, and as each name is called, the other group members look directly into the eyes of the one named, who rises and for 10 minutes faces them. Thus a rapport and a relationship is established because the directive magnetic force of each soul is always reached from eye to eye. This is the occult significance of the words, "Can you look me in the eye?" Or they eyed each other. They eyed each other, and similar phrases. Then, having established this interlocking relationship, the group sits in silence for 10 minutes. This is done in order to withdraw the consciousness from all world and personal affairs and center it upon the work to be done. At the end of that time, the leader names the glamour with which the group is to be occupied. As I'm reading this, friends, I hope, and I hope you guys are reading this and hear it and are also recognizing it as we go through it. And recognizing connections as we go through it, not just connections with earlier parts of the book, connections with, or assimilation with earlier parts of the book, assimilation, synthesis with other books that you've read. What I just picked up on as I'm reading this, and this may be, pretty common sense, but it was worthy enough for me to, it stopped me in my tracks for a minute. Let me get back to where we're this work is very different from that of the Eastern work. And we've discussed this in this book particularly. It's been told to me many times over, mainly by Carla, that this material goes somewhere different than where the Eastern teachings are going to take you. And we're seeing the evolution, as DK had put it out there for us. We're seeing the evolution and the growth of the spiritual work. And it's one thing to find yourself illuminated or enlightened by having gone and done the work, the Eastern work. And then it's another, you're still living. It's another thing to get together with those who've done that work and now do the work for humanity. This is not individual work anymore. The Eastern work is getting you to a certain point, this work is bringing humanity to a certain point and aiding in the service of humanity. This is the evolution of that work. That's what I just recognized as we got to this point. And this is just a recognition of what was said earlier, but we absorb earlier and then we learn. Essentially, it comes to us later, and this is a really good example. I could go back and find where DK had said this to us, and I don't think we need to. But as we're reading this, it's like, oh, of course, man, I'm so silly, and that's how these things come. Really, really, pretty amazing. This is very advanced work, even in comparison to what we've been, what's possible in terms of the Eastern work. In a sense, now I don't mean this in a negative connotation, but this is more selfless. I'm not going to say that work is selfish. Everybody looks selfish in the midst of this journey at some point for a while. And maybe even that continues. I don't know how long. I can't say. I can't judge that. But we do appear to be selfish because we're separating ourselves. But after that work is done, now we are moving on. And we're being selfless. Now, how we appear to others while we're doing this, that's not for us to dive into, I don't believe. All right, so after we've looked each other in the eye, we've established this interlocking relationship. The group sits in silence for 10 minutes. This is done in order to withdraw the consciousness from all the world personal affairs and center it upon the work to be done. And at the end of that time, the leader names the glamour with which the group is to be occupied. There will be no dissension about the glamour at the time of the group meeting, because the group members outside of the meeting and for a month prior to the undertaking of the task of dissipating the glamour will have made a study of it, its implications, its historicity and effects, psychological, individual, group, and national, and also its widespread influence over humanity as a whole. The experience of the group in this type of work will determine the nature of the glamour to be dealt with. As I earlier pointed out, the inexperienced group of workers will begin by dealing with one of the glamours which hinder aspirants and will pass on from these to handle the more powerful and more widely dispersed glamours which trouble humanity as a whole. This preface to the work is frequently called the act of naming, because both the group members and also the glamour are named. This is profound. I hope this is bringing up a new recognition of other groups that have done these types of things and how it's been done, without everyone knowing it, without knowing this process. This is being done quite often. My question then is, how do they come to the knowledge of this without discussing this? Or have they just recognized that there's no need to talk about this material and just do the work? Or how would they come to knowing that this, in different terms, is the work at doing this. This is a very interesting thing, but I've seen this before, and that's what's interesting to me. And it's people that it's been done by people that did not mention, have never mentioned this material, but yet I see that they've used this process. So if you've seen this process done in other places, I would be curious for somebody to contact us and point out where and where this has been done before, and what other practitioner type applicant who's teaching this is what I want to know. So the next stage is similar to the preparatory stages in the formula for the dissipation of Glamour for the individual. You have therefore the following. I'm gonna call it there for today. This section is pretty, it continues on a good bit. I talked a lot much more than I figured I would. I had breaks that I had to take. I'm sorry about that. I think we pick up on this later, and I'll just pause the video here, and then whether I pick up on it later today or tomorrow, it'll be in the next video. All right, thanks. Have a good one.